It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end. And so that was that was by design for us to get back to our...
In the aftermath of Caitlin Clark's explosive rise and equally controversial absence from Team USA, the entire landscape of women's basketball has been thrown into a storm of scrutiny, debate, and deeper questions about power, politics, and the future of the sport. What should have been a routine Olympic roster decision instead became one of the most polarizing moments in modern basketball history, especially when Clark, arguably the most influential rookie the WNBA has ever seen, was left off the roster for the Paris 2024 Olympics. Official explanations leaned on experience, team chemistry, and the presence of established legends like Diana Taurasi, Breanna Stewart, and Aya Wilson, but that narrative quickly unraveled under intense public and media pressure. Prominent voices like Stephen A. Smith openly criticized the move as a catastrophic marketing failure, pointing out that Clark's presence alone had already transformed viewership numbers, shattered attendance records, and injected unprecedented mainstream attention into women's basketball. Her college finale at University of Iowa drew historic ratings, and her transition into the WNBA continued that momentum, with arenas selling out and television audiences multiplying whenever she played, clear evidence of what many now call the Caitlin Clark effect. But beyond the numbers lies a more complex and uncomfortable narrative. Reports from respected journalists, including Christine Brennan, suggested that the decision may have been driven not purely by basketball logic, but by fear. Fear of Clark's overwhelming popularity, fear of the media circus surrounding her, and fear of how her massive fan base would react if she were limited to a bench role behind veterans. This revelation reframed the situation entirely. Instead of a merit-based omission, it began to look like a calculated move to avoid controversy, effectively sidelining the sport's biggest attraction to maintain internal balance. At the same time, tensions within the league added fuel to the fire. Comments from veteran players, including earlier remarks by Taurasi warning that reality is coming for rookies, were reinterpreted by fans as signs of generational friction. On the court, Clark faced unusually physical defense throughout her rookie season, including viral incidents involving players like Chindy Carter, which only intensified perceptions that she was being targeted rather than protected. The fallout has been enormous. Social media erupted, sports networks dedicated entire segments to the controversy, and fans, many of whom were new to women's basketball because of Clark, felt alienated. This raised a critical question for the WNBA and USA basketball. Can the sport sustain its newfound growth without its biggest draw consistently in the spotlight? Clark's absence from Team USA didn't just remove a player, it removed millions of potential viewers, global attention, and a unique opportunity to elevate women's basketball on the Olympic stage. Ironically, the attempt to control the narrative may have done the opposite, exposing internal insecurities and highlighting how much the sport now depends on a single transcendent figure. As Clark takes time to rest after a grueling season that saw her play an extraordinary number of games across college and professional levels, the league finds itself at a crossroads. The situation has become more than just a roster controversy. It's a defining moment that could shape the future direction of women's basketball, forcing leaders to decide whether to embrace the disruptive power of new stars or continue relying on traditional structures that may no longer align with the rapidly evolving sports landscape. The moment Caitlin Clark was left off Team USA for the Paris 2024 Olympics didn't just surprise fans. It detonated a controversy that exposed the fragile power dynamics at the heart of the WNBA, and what followed felt less like a roster decision and more like a turning point for the entire sport. This wasn't just about a rookie missing out. This was about the single most influential figure in women's basketball being deliberately kept off the biggest global stage at the exact moment her popularity was peaking, and that alone raised a question that refuses to go away. How do you leave the face of your own growth behind? Official explanations leaned heavily on experience, pointing to veterans like Diana Taurasi, Breanna Stewart, and Aya Wilson. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Because while those names bring championships and legacy, Clark brought something the league had never seen before, a tidal wave of new fans, record-breaking TV numbers, sold-out arenas, and a cultural moment that transcended sports entirely. And yet, she was the one left at home. The backlash was instant and relentless. Analysts like Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back, calling the decision one of the biggest marketing mistakes in sports history, and he wasn't alone, because the numbers didn't lie. Clark's games consistently outperformed others in viewership. Her college run at University of Iowa shattered records, and her transition to the WNBA injected life into a league that had been fighting for mainstream relevance for years. So when she was excluded, it didn't just feel wrong, it felt intentional. And that's where the narrative shifted from confusion to suspicion. Reports from insiders, including respected journalist Christine Brennan, revealed something even more shocking. The decision may not have been about basketball at all, but about fear. Fear of her popularity, fear of her fan base, and fear of the chaos that could erupt if she wasn't given enough playing time. Think about that for a second. A generational superstar wasn't left off because she couldn't contribute, but because the system didn't know how to handle her impact. And then came the deeper layer, the tension inside the league itself. Comments from veterans like Taurasi, once seen as harmless warnings, were suddenly re-examined as potential signs of a generational divide. On the court, Clark faced relentless physical play, including viral moments involving Chindi Carter, fueling a growing belief among fans that she wasn't just being tested, she was being targeted. Was this about competition or control? That question lingered as social media exploded, debates intensified, and millions of new fans, many of whom had only started watching because of Clark, began to disengage. Because here's the reality no one in the league can ignore. People weren't just watching women's basketball, they were watching Caitlin Clark. And now comes the part that should worry everyone involved. With Clark sitting out, resting after one of the most demanding seasons ever played by a rookie, the spotlight has shifted, and not in a good way. Ratings dips, reduced engagement, and a noticeable drop in buzz have all raised the same unavoidable concern. Did the sport just sideline its own momentum? Because opportunities like this don't come often. A player who can change the trajectory of an entire league in a single season is rare, and when that player is kept off the biggest stage, it doesn't just create controversy. It creates consequences. The decision to leave Clark off Team USA may have been framed as strategic, but to millions watching, it looked like hesitation, like fear, like a system struggling to adapt to a new reality where one player's influence is bigger than the structure itself. And that's why this story is far from over. Because whether you see it as a mistake, a calculated risk, or something deeper, one thing is undeniable. Caitlin Clark has already changed the game, and now the game has to decide if it's ready to change with her.